Hey y'all, and welcome to Brawl. My name is Brian, and Markwayne Mullin takes a wrecking ball to Kaitlan Collins, who is just hoping that he says something out of line, but the reality is, he holds all the cards, just like the Republicans do when it comes to the government shutdown. Let's dive in.
And I think you'd agree that in part of why he won re-election was because of his promises on the economy. There's a new CNN poll today out that says Americans are not that impressed with how he's handled it so far. It's 56% majority of the public disapproves. That's actually lower, or it's a higher disapproval than it ever was during his first term in office.
It's still higher than it ever was with Biden, though.
Well, but are we judging him just on Biden's numbers?
No, I'm just saying that if you're gonna use numbers, you're using his high number in his first 4 years where we had inflation at 1.4%.
It's worse than it ever was during his first term in terms of how they're viewing it. But
sure,
my point,
but he's got to recover from 4 years of Biden. Keep in mind, we had we were in a recession underneath Biden, but no one talked about it. Sorry, I'm sorry to say that.
They were asked how Trump is handling the economy over Biden. I mean, they were asked about the tariffs specifically, and they said they disapprove of that even by a wider margin, 61 to 39%.
President Trump will get this economy where it needs to go. He said that he was going to do what he's doing with the tariffs moving on. He said he's going to keep people from taking advantage of us. These countries have been taking advantage of us. A lot of people didn't understand tariffs because most presidents just didn't talk about it. They have been taking advantage of us, and we've been losing billions and trillions of dollars by propping up their economy while our economy is suffering. When our economy suffers, then we have to have national debt. Our national debt is climbing. The way to get that solved is we have a growth in our GDP, bring back manufacturing to the United States rather than allow these companies to go into Mexico or go into Taiwan or go into China, make their product from there, their American countries, and turn back around and sell it to us.
Okay, so you're saying essentially they need to have a little faith in the president and wait for his policies. Speaking of what's happening on the Hill today, Chuck Schumer, the leader of the Senate Democrats, came out and said they have the votes to block the House funding bill that came through from Republicans on that in terms of what that's going to look like. They're arguing because Republicans didn't work with them on this, that they're not going to pass it. What happens? Is the government going to shut down in your view?
Chuck obviously knew he had the votes to begin with because we only have 53. It takes 60 to get there. So we don't have 60.
You need 8 Democrats to vote with you.
Well, we're going to need 8 because Rand Paul's no, so that we have 52, but we don't have 53 Republicans. It's interesting to me that he said that because I was on the floor when he said that today. And I'm like, well, isn't this the same CR, the same spending levels that you voted for in September, the same spending levels that you voted for in December? So what has changed? What's changed is you have President Trump in office rather than President Biden in office, because there's no other argument you can have here. They weren't willing to shut it down. They were okay with these numbers 2 other times, but this is in 2024. Now that Trump's in office, it's their hatred towards Trump that they're willing to shut down the government for. It's absurd. Why wouldn't they support the policies, the numbers that they voted for underneath Biden?
Do you think the government will shut down?
No, I think they cave in by Friday.
Okay, you think that, okay, you just mentioned the debt, though. Rand Paul's not voting for it because he says it adds $2 trillion to the debt this year. How do you justify voting for it?
Rand Paul's decisions and what he makes is his decision. You don't have to ask him himself. For me,
but you care about the debt.
Absolutely I do. But for me, we have leftovers. This should have been taken care of October 1st. Chuck Schumer never brought a spending bill to the floor. He had every one of them by July 31st. He refused to hear one appropriation bill, not one. So now we have leftovers that we got to deal with from the Biden administration. How long do we deal with that? We're not going to balance the budget off of when we're 6 months into this to this FY25, which ends September 30th. At some point, we need to cut the umbilical cord from the Biden administration, say, okay, we can't deal with your mess anymore. We need to be looking to the policies and to the fiscal responsibility that Trump can bring. And so that's FY26. So the longer we deal with FY25, which is what we're doing right now, which should have already been taken care of, mind you, on October 1st, the longer we do it, the more it distracts us from delivering what the American people wanted November 3rd.
Did Republicans get anything out of this?
Out of this? Not
because you're also voting for the same levels that Biden and Schumer
Of course, I understand that completely, but I want to start focusing on Trump's policies. I want to quit dealing with Biden's policies. We can't. It's a distraction right now. Okay, let's go ahead, pass it. Let's fund it for the rest of the year. Start working on Trump's policies through Trump's appropriations with a Republican-led House and a Republican-led Senate with a Republican-led White House. Because that's where we can get change. You're not going to affect change halfway through a fiscal year already that the money was spent by Biden and that administration. We can make real change in FY26.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That's the sad reality of the situation. Because Chuck Schumer quite literally dragged his feet when he should have been the leader of the Senate at the time and actually brought some of these bills forward so there could be a vote. Instead, he gambled the same gamble that Mitch McConnell had back in 2016. Back in 2016, Mitch McConnell was gambling that by not giving Barack Obama Merrick Garland, he was going to let the American people decide. And then if the American people indeed vote for Hillary Clinton, then they'd vote for Merrick Garland. That was going to be the deal on the table. What Chuck Schumer was hoping was that instead of giving more potential ammunition to Donald Trump, where there would be some Senate collision that would ultimately benefit him by just nature of the fact that the minority party had just enough votes to say otherwise, and it would force Kamala Harris to do something that might have been less than popular. Well, now we're dealing with all of that fallout. We're dealing with all of those issues here at once, and so it's either continue the resolution that's simply put business as usual in DC. This has nothing to do with Trump, by the way. This is the Senate realizing that that the majority gambled back in 2020 in 2024, and Chuck Schumer lost bigly. Okay? He lost bad because he's not as good of a politician as Mitch McConnell. He's not as good as reading the tea leaves as some of his other Democrats, like, for instance, John Fetterman. And he didn't have the guts to go out on a limb and even support his own candidate, Kamala Harris, with some actual votes that could have actually helped her, but instead he relied on traditional wisdom, and now they're here in a situation where the Democrats look like they're going to be responsible for an entire government shutdown, which will then give Elon Musk even more ammunition. You can't make this up. You can't make this up. I am all here for that. There's a couple of stop signs where I'd kind of wish the Trump and the Elon guys would say, you know what, let's slow down, let's hit the speed bump, and then let's get back up to speed again. But you know what, you can't match the energy of either Elon Musk or Donald Trump. So that's the good news. Now, we got to talk about something a little bit earlier before we dive back into the potential government shutdown. We do need to briefly talk about the economic problem, and I understand that doesn't look as great for Trump. He was originally promising day one things, and on one hand, gas prices have come down. Egg prices have come down. As a matter of fact, Georgia, which is one of the largest states for producing poultry, period, has mostly avoided the bird flu. And we're starting to get a handle on those problems, and therefore we're starting to see prices slowly start coming down. So these are promises where an administration who is actually caring about this issue, because remember, the Biden administration could have dealt with this last summer in 2024, but they just didn't do it because Biden, as usual, was just asleep at the wheel. And that's what happens when you let a man that old drive. Okay, this isn't some World War II veteran that could drive a tank. This is a man who can barely ride a bicycle, all right? And so the prices and the economy thing, I understand people are going to be a little bit scared. They're going to be a little bit shaky. We just had the stock market not crash, but it had a pretty low point, the worst day in about 4 years. And so people are a little bit scared about these tariffs, and they now know that there's going to be retaliatory tariffs from Europe, but you also have to remember that Europe has had tariffs pretty much since World War II. We haven't. Canada and Mexico have had to protect their own economy, so they tariff things. We haven't. So we're trying to get in on that game. We're trying to alleviate some of these problems and try to get at least some tit for tat and see if we can make some money back. It's high time that the world starts playing fair with the U.S. in that regard. And after all, we do make sure the global trade keeps on churning forward. So you'd think we get a few kickbacks from that now, wouldn't you? But when it comes to kickbacks and the Democrats, they're not in the best situation here. Now, Democrats have some leverage, at least when it comes to the potential government shutdown, despite being in the minority. In order to meet the Friday night deadline to avoid a shutdown, Republicans will need all 100 senators to agree to speed up the process. Republicans also need at least 8 Democrats to overcome a filibuster and advance the CR. Well, unless the nuclear option gets launched, but that's not likely to happen. Thanks, Harry Reid, by the way. So we'll see if the Democrats, we'll see today if Democrat strategy holds. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer has pushed for the April 11th CR, but hasn't officially weighed in. I think he has, but anyways, a Senate Majority Leader John Thune told reporters that he did not believe Senate Democrats had made an offer, though he said we're open to conversations about amendments. So that means that the conversation is still open. People are still willing to make deals. This is the Senate being the Senate, so let's let this play out. But the Democrats' gambit will likely do little except stave off the decision they have long dreaded. Shut down the government to stand up to President Donald Trump and Elon Musk's spending cuts, or stand aside and leave their unilateral government reductions unchecked. That's called being caught between a rock and a hard place. So the ball's in the Democrats' court. It's either you play our rules and you're playing with one man down, or you kind of forfeit the game and we win for a little while. Okay? That's the situation the Democrats are in, and they don't want to be there. All right? They know that they're in a rough spot, because if these cuts continue and the American people then look left and look right and go, I guess we don't need these government entities to begin with, then most people are going to just kind of ignore Elon Musk no matter which way you slice it, and that's better for the Doge agenda, that's better for the Make America Great Again agenda, that's better for the we need to shrink our federal government agenda. So yeah, you can talk about Rand Paul and even Thomas Massie if you want to. Let's be honest there, these guys have always been the same and voting the same way. Our government's too big. We are not properly stewarding tax dollars. We need to do better. So of course they're going to vote no. All right? The rest of the Republicans are wanting to play ball, but I'm not going to hold that against Rand Paul or Thomas Massie. The Democrats, on the other hand, they're the ones that can either come to the negotiating table and basically admit that they've screwed up, or they can keep going the way they've been going, and it's going to get even worse. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. And until then, y'all have a good one. And, oh, by the way, Democrats, the next time you choose your fighter, Markwayne Mullin's an actual MMA guy, okay? Do better next time. That was terrible.